another note. Business, we can be serious. Okay, so a function is this box, right? We can give it an input, maybe more than one input, maybe nothing, and then it can give us something back. And the command to give something back is return. That means stop executing the function and give whoever called you this value. Okay, so in the is prime, I am expecting to give back a true or false value. And so here, the return statement stops execution of line 13 if num is actually inside this list and gives back the value true. So that when you're at line 5 here, this equals, this assignment operation, guess number is getting the value true. Okay. If you don't hit this line, you're going to hit line 15. False is going to come out of this function, and false is going to be stuck into this value guess number. Okay. Now that's just like C in the sense that, right, the return statement has a single value. You also have the ability to return more than one value from Python using a tuple. This is not that common, but I should mention it. If you wanted to say a new function def you could return 3, 4 here. And then someone that called you could say x, y equals 2 values right? So if I simplify this a little bit and then run it, you see that x equals y. And so this is really the same thing as returning an array. The extra little syntactic, I call it syntactic sugar here, is the ability to unpack that array into separate variables on the output. So maybe that looks a little different. I don't usually use it very often. That's more like MATLAB, where MATLAB can return multiple values out of a function. Does that answer your question?
Yes, sir. The only other thing I would ask is in the textbook, it has that dragon game.
Okay.
And I was just I'm just not sure when it returns cave. I understand how the return moves values around.
Yeah.
But when it's in a while loop, I just wasn't sure is it returning it every while loop, or is it returning it once you exit the while loop? I just wasn't sure when it returns the value.
Right. So let me actually use this as an opportunity to show you how to grab this code easily. So this is the Dragon Realm you're mentioning, right? So we can get all this code here. I think he mentions it at the beginning, although I never remember the link. Invent with Python GitHub. And now we can grab this this code here, right? So this code here is the same as, let's hope. Yeah, right. You can click raw here and then say Control A, Control C, and then I can just say paste it in here. So you can type it all in, and I think there's educational value in typing it. I mean, it's tedious, but you learn it better. I got it if you're short on time. Just Google around for it in GitHub. And are you guys familiar with? Did that make sense there, or do you want me to go slower through that? Figure mids are experts at Googling for existing material. Okay. All right, so let's go down into the question you had while right here. This is your question?
No, I
Or
think
no?
it's a little higher.
Like, can you give me a line number? Oh, this one, maybe?
19, sir.
19, yeah, sure. Okay, so let's step through here. Um, choose cave. This is a function, right? I'm going to initialize this value cave to something that's empty. And while cave is not equal to 1 and not equal to 2, right? What is it equal to right now? Is it equal to 1 or 2? No, right? Which cave would you like to go in, 1 or 2? And cave now has the value that you typed. If you typed the value 1, then when you hit this while statement, this will in fact be equal to 1. You won't execute this body and you'll drop down to line 19. If you typed like B or I don't care, anything besides 1 or 2, you'll drop back into line 16 and have to choose again. So let's just make sure that's what happens, and I think it's a good chance to show you the debugging tools in PyCharm. We can click the left margin, set a breakpoint, and then hit the play with debug. And you see I've paused right here. Let's see, make sure that's running. Choose cave, and then the console. And so what do I want to say? I'm going to say R, right? I don't know. Anything I want. And, oh wait, no, this is not the console. Where are we at? Python console. Oh, shoot. Sometimes their debugger doesn't work great with the input command. Let me make sure. Where are we at? Stop. Let's not worry about the debugger for this. We'll use the debugger more when we aren't using the input command. But at any rate, that's the idea. So if you had a return in here, you have the danger of returning something that's not a 1 or a 2. So that who's ever calling choose cave is expecting to get a value of 1 or 2, right? Cave number. And now this is dangerous. Cave number could be equal to R, and that would cause an error. So that's why we have the while loop. It's really not related to the return. It's making sure that I have a valid value before I hit return.
Okay, yes, sir. That was you showed me exactly, but I wasn't making the connection between it like being inside the while loop and it being right after the while loop. So that was it. Thank you.
Great. Yeah, indentation is everything in Python, right? We don't have the squiggly braces, so anything that's indented to the right here is part of the while loop, and everything else is out. Good question. Anybody else? All right. Who has gotten to like the Hangman game? Like they've run it and are starting to explore it. It's certainly a longer one, and I think it goes through some of the coding mindset, which I talked about on in last lab. Like how do you think about code before you start writing it? Okay, so some of us. Make sure that by Wednesday's lecture, you've certainly tried out Hangman and come with your questions, because that's going to be what the quiz is about. So it would make sense to spend most of the class kind of picking apart that program. But if you haven't seen it yet, I don't know that it's too useful to stare at it now. So by Wednesday, have looked at it and have some things to think about. Okay, so since we have this program up here, let's just kind of go through it and make sure we understand the different parts of it. At the beginning, we're importing libraries. Now, these libraries are built into the Python interpreter. So we don't have to worry about the whole idea of which version of are those libraries and where they come from and the environments and everything else. Random gives us the ability to get random values, and time lets us pause execution or do other things related to time. Note that to use these libraries, we have this dot syntax where we give the name of the library and then dot, And what this is a function that's been somehow defined inside that library. Okay, so the dot, we'll call this kind of like a namespace. The reason we like to use something like time.sleep is that way I can define my own sleep function here. And then I can use my own sleep function without interfering with time sleep function, right? So at the end here, I could say, do you want to play again? Yes or no. And then at the bottom here, I could say, and that would print a nice message to the user about how they can sleep. This is great because if you think back to MATLAB, we didn't have the idea of namespaces. If you named a variable plot, like plot equals 16, can you plot any more values? You've just destroyed your ability to plot, right? Essentially, you've crippled MATLAB. So Python uses the ideas of namespaces in order to let you use the same name multiple times. Okay, so my version of sleep doesn't interfere with time's version of sleep. So it's time.sleep. Of course, it's a function, and it requires an input. And so the input it requires is a single number. And in PyCharm, if you forget what it requires, you can hit Control P, and it will give you a hint on what the function wants.
So is sleep something that's in the library that's imported from time?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. So we can't see that. That's just somewhere in the Python. Like, where's that coming from?
So now you want to pull back the curtain
Just
a little bit.
Just like a 5-second
Sure.
explanation. It doesn't have to be anything too big though.
Yeah, let's find it, right? Where is sleep? It's Python. So let me go to my desktop thing here and let's poke around. Remember that the edit configurations here, we looked at this. I stuck it in this Python interpreter, right? Users, Donna, Anaconda, env, class demo, right? So you can find out that's where all of the libraries are. Users, Donna, Anaconda, env. So let me show you that on mine, and if you'd like to find it on yours, you can do that. Let me try to keep this quick, though. I know you don't want to see this too much, but users, Donna, and then so here we go, and then Anaconda. Where's Anaconda? And then I've got my envs here, and then my class demo. And then I've got all of my libraries here. These are all the things that I can import and use in my So let's just open this up in Notepad so I don't mess up PyCharm. But here is, for example, if later on when we talk about using the internet, we'll use JSON encoders, and you'll say import JSON, you'll say JSON.encode, and all that stuff is coming from this file right here. Okay? Some of it is optimized, like time is actually written in C and compiled so that it runs a lot faster. But just like in MATLAB where you can say edit and then the name of a function, and you can bring up the actual library code, the same thing here, right? And the only reason I think this is useful to point out is that it's an interpreted language. Even the system libraries, the things you import that are provided for you, are generally written themselves in Python. And so if you're curious, you can always open them up and poke around. Did that answer your question?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Cool. That's not going to be required for you to find libraries and understand where they're at, though. Okay, so I'll keep talking then. Any other questions? All right, so this code, if I were to just give it to you, I think it would be a little hard to figure out what it's doing. And the reason is it's not reading like a book here. It's all out of order. The functions, like choose cave, before I even figure out what's going on, I've been told I have a function called choose cave. Now, the intro here, this is kind of a clever trick to give you an idea of what the program might be doing. But not every time will you be providing a paragraph of text to the user. Okay? A much better technique, and we'll call it a refactoring, a way to change the code without changing its operation, would be to put these functions below the main logic. Right? This reads more like a book. Play again is set to yes, while play again, display the intro. If you're curious what the intro is, you should be able to look that up. If you don't care what the intro is, you're like, okay, fine, it's displaying an intro. It's choosing a cave, and then it's checking the cave, whatever that means, and asking you to play again. It's a very simple game. How would I put this at the top? If I simply copy it and paste it, it'll be all kinds of errors.
The def main, and then put that at the top, and then at the bottom just call def main.
Right, I should turn this block of code into a function. Right, if I call this def the game, and now I recommend you call it main, but I want to make the point that it doesn't matter what the name is. Make sure we indent it. And then I can run the game at the bottom. Okay. So I always recommend having your primary function at the top of your code and then the supporting functions below it. And so you can even use PyCharm to collapse these supporting functions. Oh gosh, I didn't let me backspace that out. Right? And now you have something quite nice. You have the game, and then if you're curious on how do you do the intro, you can just blow up the intro and say, oh, that's clever, and then collapse it. Okay, so functions encapsulate our code, and that's one of the benefits of them. They also make it more modular so that I could give Marco the assignment, hey, make a cool intro paragraph, because he's really great with like science fiction. I'm only saying that because of the cats with the lasers coming out of the eyes. Lenny's our expert in getting user input, so we'll give him the choose cave function, and then Brooklyn is our project manager. She's going to put it all together. All right, so functions allow us to divide responsibility, and finally, functions allow us to keep our code modular so that we can upgrade portions of the code with confidence. Right? If later on Marco says, I've just had a vision and we should have cats with lasers coming out of their eyes for the intro, right? He can change that little chunk of code and we don't have to worry about whether the cave logic is still correct or anything else, right? We can just drop in his new function and our code will be fine. If it's a spaghetti thing where his code is totally mixed up with the cave logic code and it's 400 lines in one file, it's going to be very tricky to change it to the point where we're like, you know what, Mark, I love your idea, but I'm just so glad the code runs right now, and I'm just nervous that if we touch it, it will destroy itself, right? Which is kind of the walk away attitude out of 200 when we do the MATLAB video game. Like, yes, it works, but I don't know why. And we want to avoid that. We want to keep our code clean and maintainable. Okay, so language basics, make sure you know how to do string formatting, that you can use kind of the printf syntax. The only difference between Python and the other languages you've used is that we use the % sign to inject our parameters, right? So we would say something like, and they'll say %4. If we want to do more than one value, then we will need to put parentheses around this and comma separate the list. All right, a very common mistake is to simply put parentheses here, or to omit the parentheses. Okay, and this is going to create an error. Now, fortunately, PyCharm is going to realize this and highlight it for you and say, hey, there's too few arguments for the format string. The format string is this portion. I have 2% inside of it. And so PyCharm is expecting to have 2 pieces inside this little list, and there's only 1. Okay. This would be another parameter to the print function. And the print function can take other parameters. What is an extra parameter we can give to print? We talked about it on Wednesday. We can hit Control P and get a hint. There's actually several extra parameters we can give it. These are optional parameters that have a sensible default usually. So do anybody remember what was one of the optional parameters we used in print? Like when we're using input and I don't want to drop to the next line, I want to just have a colon and have the user be able to type something there.
End?
Yeah, end is how should I end this line? The default is a new line, but I could end it with nothing, or I could end it with a 7 or something random. Okay. So optional parameters are specified by the name and then an equal sign and then the value you want to provide it. Okay, I think string formatting is tricky. In every language, string formatting is a bit tricky, but there it is in Python. What else? Any questions? All right. Well, maybe I'll give you a little mock assignment then. It's not a mock assignment. I guess it is a legitimate assignment. It's just not graded. So maybe go ahead and simulate like your future family here. Give yourself 3 kids and print whether it's a boy or a girl. So say your family has and then a line is going to be boy, girl, girl, something like this, right? So you know the odds of getting a boy or girl. So they say it's 50-50, so maybe import random, get a random value, have a loop where you do it, multiple times, and then print out whether that particular one is a boy or girl. Okay, so the output might look like something. Right, where you have this printed out on one line by itself, and then on each 3 lines below, we get whether that particular child is a boy or girl. So go ahead and see what you can do there for a few minutes. You can make a new Python file or just delete what you have here. And let's see how far we get.